And that is where we are at, and thanks for joining us. We have a nice crowd here tonight at TJ Chumps. Road's a little iffy in some places, but if you're heading on out here, we're going to be out here till 7 o'clock. Coach Scott Nagy will talk men's basketball right after we talk women's basketball with Katrina Merriweather here at TJ Chumps in Fairborn. Good evening, everyone, and I want to thank you for being here. And, Coach Merriweather, don't you just love live programs? I mean, we've been here all day getting ready for this game.
I totally agree. This got kind of boring waiting, actually.
I mean, people don't realize how much we put into this. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, luckily, I'm surrounded by good people here like I am at work, so any mistake I make gets all covered up. So,
Actually, what we're talking about is that Coach had some things she had to do, and that's understandable. She has a tough job, and she got here about 2 minutes ago, and I told her it's an eternity. So we have plenty of time here to talk, Coach. And let's see. All right, you want to talk about what's coming up first, or let's go ahead and review first because we do have highlights from the win at Youngstown State. You can tell those watching on the video stream she didn't really like what happened this past weekend.
Yeah, let's review first so we can get that out of the way.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, let's start with Cleveland State. Tough loss, buzzer beater on the road.
It was. But, again, it never should have come down to that. And as you can imagine, Chelsea was all torn apart. She did a great job keeping Abshaw in front, and she's a good player. She made a play. And, you know, when you have a lead like we did, it just is really frustrating dealing with the mentality that we talked about early in the season, which is we were hunting last year.
Right.
You know, people picked us lower than we expected, and we thought we were going to have to fight for every game. Well, now we get picked second. So now we get everybody's best shot. And it's just different. And I think that it takes a little getting used to. And it's not that we don't talk about it. It's not that we don't attempt to prepare for it. But I think it's hard until you actually get in that situation.
You know, you look at the situation, especially playing on the road, it doesn't matter who you're playing, but you're still on the road. There are a lot of things that go into that. And good teams, you know, it's going to happen at times, but you have to be able to recover from that, you know. But I don't want to get away from Cleveland State first, but they were able to rebound and come back and beat Youngstown State. But it's really tough. Is it tougher for you as a coach and a coaching staff to, you know, lose in a situation like that on a buzzer beater than it is for the players?
I don't think it's any tougher for me than it is them. I mean, they're the ones that are out there running and sweating and playing. And, I mean, it was just heartbreaking. And then what Mike Bradbury started here was a winning tradition. And I think our kids expect to win. And a lot of the time, that can hurt you as much as it can help you because they kind of think it's going to be okay. If anybody ever watches Emily Vogelpohl and I interact during a game, she's always like, it's fine. It'll be okay. And I'm thinking, no, it's not going to be okay. And I do think that they really believe that. So, again, it gives them a lot of confidence when we're down. Mm-hmm. But when we're up, I think it relieves some of the urgency that we need to have to value every possession. So it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit. But, again, we just didn't do a good job defending. And really, I could say that, but we didn't score for 5.5 minutes in the third quarter.
Were you not getting good shots or just wouldn't go in?
You know, they just really wouldn't go in. They weren't any different than the ones we got in the first half. And, you know, again, they were extremely frustrated about it. And then the calls start feeling like they're going against you a little bit. And you have to have some resiliency. And we take away all the good stuff from wins and losses, and there was some things to be proud of after that Cleveland State battle back. But it was their coach's 200th win. It was her birthday. I mean, give me a break.
You had it against you that night. I mean, come on. You didn't have a chance.
You know, and so they played some inspired basketball, you know, after we let them into the game in the third quarter, and we honestly fought, and it came down to the last shot. Chelsea made a big one, and then they turned around and they made a big one too, and we ran out of time.
Well, there's something interesting. I was talking with Bob Naw, Sports Information Director here at Wright State, and that rule that you have where they were able to move the ball up, up the court, not in the backcourt, making it a little easier for that shot. Just want to get your thoughts on that. If you would like to, go ahead and share those with us.
Well, particularly for that game, it shouldn't have been a rule. They should have had to inbound it from the opposite side, but I don't have a problem with it. I think it adds a little bit of strategy to the game. And, again, we have benefited from that rule plenty. When you can have a few seconds on the clock and get the ball into Chelsea Welch's hands, usually something really good happens that close to your basket. And, again, the same thing. They have two really good players that got 25 and 20 points. I voted both of those players on the Horizon League first team. So, again, very, very talented kids. And, Man, she just made a great play.
And the race being so tough, you look at the standings now, 3 losses. So you just have to put that behind you and give the team credit. They came back against Youngstown State and came up with a big win on the road.
Yeah, they did. And again, it's very similar. We were up 16, at half, and they got within 3. And you just ask them, and we watched film today, and I just had to ask them, what is this third quarter issue, that we're having? And we watched it and reviewed it, and they just agree, like, we just don't come out with the same urgency. And, that's fine. It's not good enough. What are we going to do about it? So in practice, we put them in some very uncomfortable positions today. Where we're playing some 5-5 stuff and keeping score, and they had to meet goals. And you kind of get away from that sometimes as the season goes on. And I thought it was really good that we did that today, and they responded pretty well.
Well, like you do in the film room or video, it is these days, you have to go back and review things, and maybe there are sometimes you miss a few things. Well, we've got the video of the Youngstown game, at least the highlights. So we're going to go to those for those here in TJ Chumps. Look at one of the many monitors we have here, and we'll go through these highlights at Youngstown.
They were trying on and doing us, leaving Emily Vogelpool open, and that turned out to be a bad idea. So we were happy that she was able to knock down some shots. Chelsea and Lexi get so roughed up in there, and they just keep battling and keep fighting and keep finishing.
Good passing inside.
Yeah, and we went to Lexi quite a bit, and she missed a few layups, and but she still again fought through and defended on the other end. That's Emily Vogelpool again knocking down a 3. And something that we need her to do is shoot the ball better, and she did that. We ran a play to her here, and she had a little 15-footer. So, again, if she shows up, it makes it a lot easier for us when she scores.
What about defense to this point? It's something I know you've talked about just about every game. Every week we meet here on Mondays or over in Huber Heights. You say that the defense, a lot of it's communication and a lot of it's just experience because of the younger players who are mixed in.
It is. You've got Bree Lloyd, who comes off the bench and is a really, really talented offensive player, but played zone a lot in high school. So there's a lot of her natural habits that we just are still working on breaking a little bit. But she tries really hard. And, again, they all do. It's nobody's messing up on purpose out there. But there are times where it can be some pretty big plays where we have we don't guard the flare screen the way that we're supposed to. And, again, we got after it with that too. And the big thing for us is just to continue to get better. We just don't want to be playing our best basketball right now. Everybody's got to keep growing it, and that starts with Chelsea Welch too. There are people who are trying to figure out different ways to guard her and stop her from being so effective. So she's been working on that mid-range pull-up a little bit. You've seen that a little more, and it's been a little more consistent and going in. So we just have to keep making adjustments.
It's about the midway point of the league season. Now it's time that teams are trying to get it in gear as you head towards the tournament at the end of the season at Little Caesars Arena up in Detroit. Obviously, you're talking about getting better in certain areas other than defense. What are some of the things you'd like to see your team get better at as they head towards the tournament?
I think that we have to be a little more relaxed. When you run the dribble drive, it can be a little predictable. A lot of people watch it and they call it the weave, but that's not the intent. We're not trying to dribble weave it back and forth. And I think that if we can just get them to play a little bit of basketball without worrying about what happens when we do this. And so what we did was a little bit of 5 out today where we're passing and cutting and trying to learn each other and feed off of each other and, again, become just a little less predictable.
What about the seniors themselves now? I think they realize it. This is the last month. If we're going to make it happen, it's got to start.
And there's definitely some urgency from Chelsea and Lexi. In practice today, they were pretty focused as opposed to, well, we beat Youngstown State, so everything is okay again. They were like, no, we didn't play well. We lost the lead again, at Youngstown State. So we have to lock in and figure out how to stay committed for a full possession. A lot of the time what happens to us defensively, because we're so aggressive and we pressure the ball and we're up the line and all that stuff, is that about 10 seconds left in the shot clock, usually someone makes a mistake. And so we give all this effort, and then something usually breaks down right around there. And so, again, we worked on going 40-second possessions today. Hopefully that'll put us in a position to play a little longer.
Well, you hear this term mental preparation for a game. You can go through all the video that you want to and experience that you've seen tendencies of your opponent. But then again, when it gets to a certain situation, point of the game, that's where they have to draw from their experience and really focus, right?
No, there's no question. And we're fortunate. Again, we've got some very talented players now that have been in the system. And, again, it's a lot of it's very similar to what Mike did, too. So even, Emily and Simone and Mackenzie, they've been in the dribble drive system now for 3 years. And Lexi's been in it for 4. So I think that we can rely on them to make some decisions now and not necessarily call every single play, down the floor. So hopefully we can just continue to grow with the bench players too in that area.
I talked about this with you a lot since we've been doing these programs and separating yourself from, when you were a player, an assistant coach, and now, a head coach. You have to kind of balance things as far as the psychology aspect of it. You don't want to push too much on them. What has that been like for you? To be able to separate those things.
Interesting. Again, the freshmen, and as we've talked about before, I'm a very hands-on recruiter, so I spend a lot of time talking to our kids and their parents. So there's the component there where they can be a little sensitive. So I am conscious of it, but I'm determined to not baby them. They have to be able to play, and they have to be able to be coached by me and the rest of the coaching staff, and we don't have any issues with that. I do think that sometimes when they feel like any of us are disappointed in them, it can get a little hard for them. But we're working on getting them to bounce back a little bit. And we just call it rubber butted. Like, you made one mistake, don't let it turn into 2. We're not mad at you. It's not personal. You just need to play better. And, again, I think we're growing in that area too.
Well, it was Academic Recognition Day yesterday during the men's game. I do this every year with all the coaches, and I'll ask if you'd like to, and that is kind of rate your players at this point of the season, as far as grades are concerned, A through B, because I'm sure there's nothing less than that, correct?
Of course not.
All right, well, we'll get back to that when we return. All right, this is TJ Chumps. We're talking Wright State women's basketball with head coach Katrina Merriweather. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. This is Wright State University basketball.
Hi, I'm Bob Grody, class of 1976 and former Raiders player and coach. Did you know that once you're a Wright State grad, you're automatically a member of the Alumni Association? As a member, tap into the Wright State Network, attend a local alumni event, and earn discounts and special offers. Log on to WrightStateAlumni.com and make the most of your membership. Thank you, and go Raiders.
And welcome back to the Fairborn location of TJ Chumps. We appreciate you being with us here tonight. Another good crowd here. And, Coach, before we went to that break, we're talking about, just to kind of get an update on your team as we head into the month of February, the final month before the Horizon League Women's Tournament at the end of the month at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. We can do this 2 ways. You can talk about your players individually, or we can break it down, as a group. So it's like a group project, team. Let's first start off with how would you grade your team's offense?
I think we're at about a B+ normally. And, again, we've got some tough games coming up with 2 good defensive teams. So I'll give you another answer next Monday.
Oh, okay. So it changes week to week. It'll fluctuate, right?
It changes.
All right. What about the defensive end? Needs improvement? You can use that other than a regular letter grade?
Let's do that, like a Montessori type
Yeah.
thing. Okay, let's do that. Again, it's not from a lack of effort, and it's not from a lack of drilling it, and it's not from a lack of practice. I just think that, again, I ask a lot of them, and there's some things that don't just happen really quick, especially for freshmen. And when you want to play them and you mix that group together with the starters, I think that sometimes I can just get a little unhappy with the consistency. But again, the first 20 seconds usually look pretty good.
Yeah, they do pretty good in that area. So I'm sure that they want to definitely win basketball games, and it's just learning how to do that, because let's talk about the fact that this league is so much better. You've mentioned it every week. Every team that you face, has an opportunity to win, especially if you have to play them on their home court. So you have to really mentally prepare your team. What has that been like, especially now for the freshmen? Let's face it, they've been in it now for so many games, and they've got, 9 or 10 games left, and they should start to be able to get it by now.
It's funny you say get it, because that's what I think it is, too. I think they understand. For the first time this year, I didn't play Deja Evans against Youngstown State. She's a kid, again, who's really athletic, who has a lot of potential. Urgency isn't quite there just yet. The pace of the game is a little tough for her. And there's games where I think that she can play and play well, and then there's some where I'm like, this style is not the best for her. So I think it's tough to kind of make those decisions, because, again, I believe in all of them so much and want to give them an opportunity, because I can literally take all 12 of them, play them for a couple of minutes, and find out that it could be their night. But you have to shrink your bench just a little, and that is what I decided to do against Youngstown, where we played 8 players instead of the 12.
Do you have a
So
Do you have a plan when you go into each game, like you talked about how the style of play is against each team? And a lot of coaches like to go 8-person rotation, but you got to play a little bit more in certain situations. What do you like to do? Do you make changes actually during the game, or you pretty much stay on plan with what you've determined that you were going to do going into that game?
fouls usually cause you to not be able
sure.
to follow a plan. And sometimes that happens. Again, when we come out fired up and ready to play, we'll get some fouls, being a little aggressive. Simone Simmons, again, is really long, but a 5'8" player guarding 4 players. So sometimes they post her up a little bit, and it gets her in foul trouble early. So I do have to go to the bench earlier than I want. Mackenzie went down in the third quarter with her ankle again. It's super sensitive right now. So Bree Lloyd ends up in the game, at the 8.5-minute mark. So I don't spend a whole lot of time trying to diagram a plan that can get changed just because somebody gets a foul. So
right, I'm sure you have backup plans in situations like that because fouls always come into the equation. As well as injuries. Something that you can't think about, but you just have to keep pressing on.
Yeah, so that's what we do. We just try to
just keep pressing on.
Whatever
right?
happens in that moment, it's kind of like your turn. You feel like playing well today, and that's kind of what the conversation is I always talk about how hard they play, they try, they care, but we're in a place now, second round, where you have to play well. So it's not good enough to just play hard. And, that, again, for the freshmen is an adjustment because they look at you with these big eyes. They're like, but I'm really trying.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know, but you have to actually do it right.
Well, that's where the seniors, I'm sure, step up, and hopefully they can help them and, figuratively, hold their hand and get them through this.
And I think they do. Nia had a big turnover against Youngstown State, and 10 games ago, the team would have just been like, my gosh, why would you do that? And this time, Chelsea runs over to her and says, hey, it's okay. Next time I'll come to you. And it's so interesting today in practice, a very similar situation happened where she killed her dribble over on the baseline, who was the first person to run over to her. Chelsea.
Yeah.
And those things, they give you a little bit of confidence that when those situations happen in a game, that we'll be a little better for it than we were against Youngstown, or before that, the play was against Missouri. So it's getting better, So.
Well, talking about practices, how was the practice today and how's it been, over the last couple of weeks? Because it can become a grind at times, especially when the student athletes go back to school, after that long break during the wintertime.
It is. And again, I think that it's an adjustment that they have to make. When I recruit them, I tell them that you're supposed to be a student, an athlete, and a great citizen. You don't get to pick one of the three or two of the three. You're supposed to do all three. Again, their scholarship entails a lot. The way that they are taken care of by, again, our administration, our staff, and the supporters, all the people who invest in athletics and in our program. There really isn't an excuse for you not to do well in school, for you to not show up and play hard and practice every day, and for you to be a good person. So they don't get a whole lot of slack when it comes down to those things. They just need to get it figured out.
Yeah, the expectation levels are there, and they know it in the beginning when they come in.
Absolutely.
All right, we talked about the games at Cleveland State and Youngstown. Now, you have to look ahead. Coming up, the next games with Milwaukee and also Green Bay. Always a tough trip in the Horizon League.
It is. Again, Milwaukee, us, IPUI, Green Bay, Milwaukee, we're all just kind of, beating each other up a little bit. We're losing to each other, and that's pretty much it. With, of course, this exception to us in Cleveland State. So, Milwaukee's a big game because we're fighting right now for third. And then, again, we'll get IUPUI again here later. And Green Bay is obviously Green Bay. And what we're going to have to do is make shots, and it sounds obvious because people say, well, you have to score points to win. Well, it's not quite that easy. They're all about 5'10" to 6'2", and they plug in that lane. And when you run a dribble drive, your whole goal in that offense is to get to the lane. So we're going to have to make shots on the exterior and just shoot the three better and get offensive rebounds. So.
Well, you know what you're facing, too. Like you said, everybody knows everybody what they're going to be able to do. It's just to be able to execute it. So you start with Milwaukee and you take each game one game at a time, not even looking ahead to Green Bay.
No, not at all. And, again, I think that our kids understand that. When we play and we tell them you have to beat everyone. If you want to win a championship, there is no team that's more important than the next. And so I do think that they get that and they understand. And I think you can't help but be a little worked up for Green Bay. I think everybody's just sick of it. I know I am. I think our kids are. but they do understand that beating Green Bay and losing to Milwaukee doesn't do us any good either.
No.
So it's all 100% Milwaukee right now, and then we'll turn the page hopefully after we
All right,
take care of them.
we'll turn the page right now and take another break here. We're talking with Katrina Merriweather, the head coach of Wright State women's basketball. We'll be back with more here at Fairborn's TJ Chumps when we return. This is Wright State University basketball.
What does it mean to be a pioneer, reaching your full potential? It means being bold. No, bigger than bold, monumental. Where would we be if we ceased at the first "you can't do that"? How would we advance if we stopped in our tracks every time we heard "hey you, move back"? We develop thick skin when opposition wishes we'd stay soft. Against resistance, our persistence will pay off. At Wright State, our goal remains central. We are the pioneers of potential.
And welcome back to TJ Chumps in Fairborn. This is the Katrina Merriweather Show. We're talking Wright State University women's hoops. Going to be here for the next couple of minutes, and Scott Nagy will be stepping in along with Hall of Fame coach Jim Brown. We'll be talking about men's basketball between 6 and 7. And Coach Merriweather, people like to know what is coming up next. The new crop of players will be coming in next year. Is this kind of an update of the players that you've signed for the upcoming season next year?
Well, we'll start with Tanisha Dixon, who came at Christmas, who's a post player, who's very similar to Lexi, a few inches taller. So hopefully that'll give her the ability to finish a little more efficiently around the rim. Again, Lexi does her best at 5'9.5" with 6'2" kids, but I think Tanisha is going to provide a lot of physical play for us down low, so I'm excited about her. Then Angel Baker, who's the senior in Indianapolis. Who right now is the front runner for Indiana's Miss Basketball. She's the leading scorer on the number 1 team in the state, and she's going to be a great addition with us losing Chelsea. They're very different. She's more of a pure point guard, but I do think that she'll be able to step in and create some offense for us. And then Anijah Harris, the kid up in Columbus, I just watched her play at Gahanna Lincoln. She had 21, hit 4 threes. So that's always nice. I like it when the ball goes in the basket a lot.
Yeah, especially when you're there to watch it.
Yeah, for sure.
That really helps too, especially when you're recruiting players and the ones you've already got signed for next year, that they're being able to play well right now, because it gives them optimism. Of course, you don't express that stuff to your current roster, because we've already talked about what their focus is right now. Mm-hmm. But people have to realize that the responsibilities not only of the head coach but mainly of the assistants also. They have a lot going on rather than just sitting there with clipboards or whatever on the sideline during games during the season.
Oh, you got it. When we were in Cleveland, in Youngstown, I went to a game then. So did Samika. We're going to continue to recruit. I don't know how you can't, despite what's going on. And I don't know. It's just something that we're going to do all year round, all the time. And we've got a couple scholarships left, and so we'll see what happens in the spring. Kind of excited about some things that are in the works, so we'll see if we can pull some of that off. But you're right, our kids are responsible for it, as well as the coaching staff, and we will have official visits, and one of them may be before the season is over. And again, they're expected to do all that. They're expected to go to school and play basketball and make sure that this program is better when they leave than they found it. That's just what you're supposed to do.
A lot of challenges being the head coach. It's like being a CEO, of a company. You have to make all of these important decisions, because the final decision, rests with you. And that's why it's so important to have a staff not only that is qualified and has experience, but also one you can trust.
Oh, tell me about it. Again, I hear a lot of horror stories from a lot of coaches in a lot of places, again, whether it's their administration or their staff. And I'm so fortunate and so blessed that we don't have to worry about any of that. I've got people who genuinely care about kids and their student-athlete experience, and that are also knowledgeable about basketball. And I really couldn't ask for a better staff. And again, Kim Demings was just the icing on the cake.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's joining your staff too. What's it like for you as as a group, just the group of the coaches and your entire staff? Do you have a chance to just kind of get together, for a little while, just to kind of get away from things? Yeah,
we normally do, whether it's dinner or lunch, or we sit back there and we meet a lot and we get some work done. And then there's usually like a squirrel moment for a couple minutes, then we have to come back and do some more work. But I think it's just our chemistry. We get along really well. Again, I've known Jenny's been in Wright State for 7 years. Keith's been there for 6. Samika and Ashley fit in perfectly. Like, they've been here just as long too. So our meetings are probably longer than they have to be, because there's a lot of laughing going on in there. But obviously a lot of work too. So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially the pressure of a season, not only the head coach, but the assistants also because of some of the things we talked about, and that's all their different responsibilities. I think it's people got to realize that sometimes you're humans too.
Yeah, I don't think our kids think that. That's for sure. They just think that we work and go home, and there's nothing else to it. But I remember thinking that about my coach too, so I'm perfectly okay with it. I thought she was an alien, so I'm sure they think the same thing about me.
All right, Coach Merriweather, our time has flown by again. Appreciate you being here. I know be early again like you were this week, next week, and we'll be in good shape. All right. Thanks a lot. Up next is Milwaukee, correct, on Thursday,
Milwaukee.
right?
Yep, you
and
got it.
Then Green on Saturday, but I won't even say that because Milwaukee's the only focus you have right now.
Only thing that matters.
All right, Coach. Good luck up at Milwaukee against the Panthers later on this week. Stay with us. Scott Nagy Show coming up next. We're talking Wright State men's basketball. We'll be back at TJ Chumps in Fairborn after these messages. This is Wright State University basketball.